In this week's New England Report video, we got the first winter flounder of the season in Massachusetts, striped bass along the oceanfront Rhode Island, improving blackfish action in Connecticut, and much, much more. Stay tuned.
The fishing news is sponsored by these fine partners.
Hey there, Toby Lapinski for the New England edition of the Fisherman magazine with this week's web video fishing forecast for New England. Well, I'm out here with my son. He's doing a little casting and behind the camera right now, seeing if we can get a couple of schoolie striped bass. Perhaps we've got a nice sunny day, although it's a little breezy, a little chilly. Nonetheless, it's a good day to be out doing our social distancing, of course, keeping at least 6 feet away from anyone else. Actually shooting for a little bit more because 6 feet is a little too close for my book if we're fishing. Anyway, that's not why you came here today. I want to start off with a news item before I get into the reports. As I'm sure you're aware, over this past winter, a lot of the late season winter fishing shows were canceled due to concerns over at that time, developing COVID-19 pandemic. And due to this, we ended up with a rather large surplus of magazines for the March issue because that's the month that we had planned to be handing out at all the shows, so we had an excess of copies printed and ordered. Well, I've been looking for something to do with them for a while now. I didn't want to just throw them away. I didn't want to just recycle them. I wanted to find a good use for them. Well, some of you in southeastern Connecticut might have noticed that your children, with the lunches that the school's providing, might have come home with a copy of the Fisherman magazine this week. As it turns out, I was contacted by Christian Urban. He's the food service director at the East Lyme and Salem schools. He contacted me last week. We made arrangements to meet up, and I gave him several hundred copies of that March issue that we had planned to hand out. And they were included in the lunches this week for East Lyme, Salem, and Griswold schools. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, had the children been at school, obviously they'd still be participating in the school lunch program. So a lot of the schools, at least in my area in Connecticut, I believe they're doing other places as well, but what they're doing is they're offering school lunches, take home for the students. It's an awesome program, really appreciate it by especially us. My family takes advantage of it and a lot of others. So again, those magazines were included this week, and Christian said he's going to check with some of the other schools in the area to see if any of them are interested. And anyone out there listening, if you've got a connection to one of the local school systems and you're interested in including a copy of the Fisherman magazine in those lunches, I can definitely help you out, so long as you're somewhat local. Can't be traveling all over the place to deliver them, but I'd love to get some copies to the schools to hand out, to give to the kids, to give to the kids' parents, etc. Free copies of the magazine. So if you're interested in doing something like this, just shoot me an email. It's Lapinski@thefisherman.com, and hopefully we can come up with some sort of arrangement, meet up, what have you, and we can hook up the kids in your town as well. All right, we're going to move on to the reports right now. Going to start off up in New Hampshire as Tim Moore of Tim Moore Outdoors checked in. Now, we've had a couple of nice photos from him in recent weeks, and he said that the salmon bite up on Lake Winnipesaukee has been okay so far. Some people are doing better than others. Some are having a tough go at it, but nonetheless, Tim's boat is in the water. Hasn't had a ton of time on it quite yet, as last week or a week before, I believe I reported that it was getting inspected because he is a state certified guide, so the boat had to get checked out. But nonetheless, he's been out chasing white perch lately, and he said that is the best way to describe the bite, chasing them. Because what's happening is he's finding these massive schools of white perch. He pulls a fish or two and then they disappear on him and he has to go chase them down again. But nonetheless, putting together a decent catch on those big bruiser Winnipesaukee white perch. And he finished off by saying he is still not yet guiding, not allowed to by the state of New Hampshire. Any of the guides, they're not allowed to go. But of course, as soon as that changes, he will let me know, and I will pass word along to you. In the meantime, check out his videos on YouTube or his website, which is timmooreoutdoors.com. And then in Massachusetts, while there has been some rumors over the last couple of weeks throughout southern New England of winter flounder being caught, I didn't have any actual actual confirmation just yet. That was until this weekend, as the first confirmed catch of a keeper winter flounder came my way for southern New England in 2020, courtesy of Captain Jason Colby of Little Sister Charters. Now, he was sailing out of Quincy, Mass this weekend, and he was supposed to go out for haddock, but unfortunately the weather did not allow for it, so he made a small trip, did a little bit of exploratory action looking for winter flounder, and angler Fang Couch was able to land the first keeper of the season aboard Little Sister. Now, Jason reports 4 keepers in 4 hours of fishing, spread between 3 anglers, so it's not like they hammered it, but nonetheless, it is a good start, better than his first winter flounder start last season, which only produced a couple of short fish. Also on the board for the day was Armindo Ramos, a regular on board Little Sister. I also got word of some other catches this weekend, posted on Facebook in Connecticut. The Connecticut fishing reports actually this week, as you will see at thefisherman.com, referenced some scattered winter flounder from Niantic all the way down into the Norwalk area in Long Island Sound. And then next up, heard from Garrett and Cindy Krisnowek. They said they braved the cold over the weekend and snow flurries. I know I was out Saturday morning in a surprise snow squall. But nonetheless, these guys were the guys and girls were up in Massachusetts fishing on a lake. And Garrett was the first to get on board with a good-sized calico, or crappie as a lot of us refer to them, for his efforts in the snow. But Cindy wasn't about to be outdone, however, as she landed a nice-sized rainbow trout a short time later. Congrats on both of those catches. And then moving on down into Rhode Island, it was mostly about striped bass this week. I'm seeing more and more activity. I'm getting more reports from several different sources of fish in South County, Narragansett, up in Narragansett Bay, East Bay, on over to Newport. So they are really starting to show this week. Got to keep in mind, of course, if you're going to head out and fish, have plan B, C, D, maybe even E in mind, because as I'm sure you're already aware, state beaches, state parks are closed. You can't park, you're not supposed to fish, so you got to find those alternate locations. But nonetheless, Gil Bell, he called me up this week, said that he was fishing in South County, ran into a bunch of schoolies, actively feeding schoolies. He was having a hard time getting them to bite. He's throwing the usual stuff, the small jigs, soft plastics. It wasn't until he switched over to the biggest lure in his bag, a big 8-inch Sebile, when the fish started to finally hit. So we got a nice fish that first morning out, got a couple of hits, went out the following morning, again, got several small schoolies on that big, Sebile stick shad. So, odd to say the least that they didn't want the small stuff, they wanted the big stuff, but good for Gil for sticking it out and getting a nice bass. And also in Rhode Island, I was contacted by one of the YouTube subscribers here, Carlos De Hoyos of Pawcatuck. Now, he caught and released his first striped bass of the season, fishing somewhere from shore in Pawcatuck. I just want to remind you that if you too are watching this video, you want to submit your catches, your videos, your photos, you can do so by emailing me at Lapinski@thefisherman.com. Just being sure to include some details about the catch, angler in question, generally where it was caught. You don't have to give me the exact spot. The state is sufficient. And anything else you want to let me know, tactics, what have you, that produced the catch, and I'd love to feature you in an upcoming video. Moving on into Connecticut, received a good mix of fresh and saltwater catches this week. I'm going to start off with some big blackfish. First one is the biggest one that I've gotten word of yet. It was just shy of 9 pounds, landed by Anthony Landolfi, fishing somewhere in the New Haven area. I fished with Anthony a bunch of times. He and a couple of his friends have been really hitting the blackfish grounds regularly, doing well, getting anywhere from a few keepers to a lot of keepers on each outing. I'm sure a day like today, nice sun would be good, although I did see before I got to this protected spot out in the main sound, there were some white caps, so guessing actually maybe he wasn't out there today. But nonetheless, that blackfish bite in New Haven has been pretty good lately. And then I heard from Gabrielle Gabriel Medina, another YouTube viewer, as he and his daughter, Gabrielle, were fishing the Connecticut shoreline for striped bass this week. Now, he said that he has been doing well on small schoolies, primarily using blood and sandworms, hopefully while using circle hooks, as they're going to be required next year, so you might as well get used to them now. He said he's been getting several small stripers per outing. He also noted the worms seem to be doing the trick, as when he's tried jigs, small swimming lures, stuff like that, he hasn't done anything, but then immediately upon switching back to the worms, the fish start to cooperate and start hitting. Changing gears on over to freshwater now. Fisherman contributor Nick Canaris. You've seen his photos here before. You've seen his articles in the magazine. Well, he talked to me this week, said he and his daughter got out. That's 3-year-old Sophia. They've been putting in some time on crappies on the Connecticut River and laid an absolute smackdown on them this week, getting some mega slabs. And then just before I was coming out today, I got another follow-up email from Nick. He said that with the wind lately, at times it's been tough to stay on top of the fish. So what he's been doing, he's been taking that little 16th ounce jig head and basically just bouncing it along the bottom as he drifts, trying to find the fish. Well, just about every single trip out, he's been getting some big catfish on the little jigs, and he recommended it if anybody wants to actually target catfish right now with catfish specific gear. He figures you're going to be able to do really well on some big fish. Again, he's just been fishing the coves of the Connecticut River. Those traditional spring crappie spots seem to be loaded with some big catfish. So that's a really good tip from Nick, and something also been meaning to mention each week in the past. It just keeps slipping my mind. I apologize. But if you live in the Old Saybrook area, I highly recommend checking out the restaurant owned by Nick's family. It's called TJ's Restaurant and Pizza in Old Saybrook. My family and I try to go there quite regularly. Obviously, right now, they're doing curbside to go. Picked up some pizzas from the other day. They were excellent, so give it a look. And then let's see, the next couple of pictures actually came in last week. I didn't have a chance to fill them in because we had just so many photos come through, but I wanted to pass them along to you nonetheless. First up, we got another Fisherman magazine contributor, this time Kyle Quinn, with a really nice smallmouth bass that he landed on a recent outing at Candlewood Lake. Now, Kyle has been doing really well on the big spring bronzeback. Obviously has that bite dialed in really well right now, so congrats on a nice catch, Kyle. And then last up, got a picture of a real nice sized brown trout landed by Jameson Steinhardt. No, Jameson from years ago. His family, used to go to the same campground as I. We used to always talk fishing. He actually was on the Dreamboat leaderboard at one point last year with a big black sea bass, but nonetheless, right now he is on the trout, as many anglers are doing. I'm finding a lot of people with renewed interest in trout fishing this season, whether that's because it's probably the easiest place to social distance is along a local stream or whatever, or just the fact that the bite has been so good. But nonetheless, that's a great way to get out and spend some time in the fresh air, either on your own or with your immediate family who live in the household with you. All right, well, there you have it. I'm Toby Lapinski for the New England edition of the Fisherman magazine, wishing you tight lines if you head out onto the water this weekend.